I'm still sick. And you know what that means? That means we've got to talk about stuff without an audience here to criticize me for it. You've got the comment section for that now. And somehow we live in a fake simulated reality. We have to be living in one because it turns out that there are accounts from across the globe that are MAGA influencers. Did you know that United States politics that are supposed to be incredibly insular and independent from other countries' foreign everything, at least that's what the Republicans tell me, did you know that our politics are uniquely affected by everybody else? And not just in the sense that, oh, we have a Paris Climate Accord, oh, we're part of NATO, oh, we might get involved with Israel. No, like literally MAGA influencer accounts that are not actually based in the United States and are actively shaping the opinion of United States citizens. But before we get into that, the fan art section is populated with all kinds of cool stuff you guys keep sending me, and this one is from Dear Revan Hansen. They said, a chibi slime cat Suris. I hasn't done more highlights and or shading, but I started to get a little burnt out and decided this was all right as is. Honestly, I think this is fantastic. I love seeing y'all's fan art. It means the world to me when you guys drop stuff like this, and I'm just honestly so fucking proud seeing so many artists in the community that actively get better and better as they do fan art. Some of you have been doing this stuff in the fan art section for so many years. I've actively watched your styles improve over time, and it's wild. That said, thank you for your fan art submission. If you want your fan art to be shown in a future video, the best way to do so is to drop it into the fan art section of the Discord. So let's talk about some of these different accounts. Now, one of them is Cold War Patriot, which had over 140,000 followers on Twitter, and their bio read, USAF veteran nuclear Ronald Reagan, JFK Jr., Donald J. Trump, constitutionalist, 1776 Second Amendment. That is a bunch of fucking hashtags. And of course, they were located in Chile, of all places. America First, with over 60,000 followers, was actually located in Bangladesh. Magascope, with over 50,000 followers, is located in Nigeria. What does this actually mean? Well, first, let's get into how this stuff actually was found out. So, X.com, formerly Twitter.com, originally did not show you your location, but they've been flirting more and more with letting more information about their private users be known to the general public. Now, while there's plenty of evidence that this is a bad thing, there are some hilarious side effects of it, like this situation here, where we see a bunch of MAGA influencers that are so patriotic and love America and their American citizenship, and yet aren't from the country, don't even live in the country, don't even post from the country. Now, Twitter says that they are rolling out this update because it's an important first step to securing the integrity of the global town square. They plan to provide many more ways for users to verify authenticity of the content they see on Twitter, which is really cool considering that they got rid of the original verification settings and changed them to a pay-to-win system, which is super neat. I love capitalism. But I can honestly say that they did actually achieve what they wanted to do when they rolled this out, and suddenly we got to see a bunch of MAGA influencers were not from the United States. Suddenly, the integrity of the global town square was in question because so much influence has been given by these accounts that repost and retweet and do everything in their power to get viral in the algorithm so that their content can be seen by hundreds of thousands of people. And it shows that the America First movement is actually a movement that is, well, based in Chile, Nigeria, Morocco, and other places. It shows that the United States and its America First movement has nothing to do with America being first, and actually is a self-destructive movement. Because if there is any entity that would want America to have an America First movement that is self-destructive, it is groups that are based outside of America. After all, with United States soft power being what it is, we exert undue influence on a bunch of other nations. So of course other nations are going to try to exert undue influence onto us. A bunch of MAGA accounts that got outed this way swiftly deleted their profiles afterwards, and the account 1776 General, who had over 140,000 followers on Twitter, was identified as being in Turkey and then posted a picture of a US passport and said that they are in Turkey for work. So what we are seeing is a bunch of these accounts either deleting themselves or doing everything in their power to run cover for themselves. Now, some of this could be logistical errors on the part of Twitter. Some of this could easily be people who actually are based in America and are just visiting other countries. Sure, I don't doubt that, but the fact that a non-zero amount, in fact, a very influential amount of these several thousand to hundreds of thousands of follower accounts were actually outed as being from other countries says a lot about the state of the, quote, America First movement. It shows that America First isn't really for America. It's a movement that is based on the benefits of foreign affairs instead. And that's something that MAGA is supposed to not really be for, right? Even the Department of Homeland Security was actually outed as potentially being ran from another fucking country. But the interesting response to this isn't from the left, who are responding to this and pointing out how many of these MAGA influencers were actually, effectively either paid shills from other countries, or not actually MAGA, or not actually right-wing, or not actually American. Like, that is all stuff that's going to come bubbling out of the water no matter what, and the left is doing a lot of that. But the right's response to this, I think, is incredibly interesting. And Mark Dice is one of those influencers that has a response I want to look at. Now, if you're not familiar with who Mark Dice is,
to celebrate Native American heritage. If this is your culture, then it's long overdue for you to leave it in the dustbin of history.
That's your guy. The guy who sees a Native American dance and then just makes fun of it and says maybe they should assimilate into America, ignoring the fact that they are the original Americans. Like, I don't know. The actual intellectual coefficient of this individual is not very high, but I promise you there will be something interesting here.
Native American culture says he's located in Indianapolis, USA. But it's revealed that this one is from Bangladesh, right over there next door to India. So stay tuned, and I'll get into some of the fallout of these foreign-run accounts being unmasked and the half-truths and spin that the liberal media is putting on it, claiming that they're all just a bunch of fake MAGA accounts, and that's why MAGA is so popular on Twitter.
Now, I'm going to be honest, I haven't seen anybody saying that specifically accounts being located outside of the United States is why MAGA's popular on Twitter. Could it possibly be that we have a right-winger in charge of Twitter and he actually makes sure that things that are right-wing tend to get more votes, and right-wing information tends to be more inflammatory, and that tends to spark more conversation and debate, and therefore you get more right-wing influence in general because those are the things that an algorithm are going to be working with more often? Like, I don't know. It seems to be a pretty basic idea of how algorithms function, is that right-wing content, as inflammatory as it can be, is the kind of thing that allows people to fight more often, and fighting more often is what runs Facebook, it's what runs Twitter, and to a lesser degree, it's what runs YouTube. After all, you can have one of the most compelling data-driven videos on the planet, but if people aren't fighting in your comment section, it's not gonna go anywhere. But it is interesting to me seeing that there are other accounts right now that are not just MAGA accounts, but are also being used as scapegoats in this entire charade. Accounts like the Native American Culture account that's located in Bangladesh. And it paints a picture for me that I was kind of thinking was the case to begin with. You've got a bunch of accounts on other sides of the political aisle that are being ran from other countries where there's some foreign interests that are at play. And then there's the much more benign explanation on top of that. One that's far more boring that I think people aren't going to want to hear, especially if you're lefty, but is still plausible. And that's the fact that some of these accounts are ran via Fiverr. Like, literally, you can pay somebody on Fiverr to run a social media presence for you, and the prices can vary, but a lot of times they are going to be people based in India. You're going to find people who are wanting to work these remote jobs that they can get as gig work on top of whatever they're doing in India, and that system, that entire economic system, benefits from people in the United States wanting to offshore their labor to people in a different country where they can pay less to them. After all, the living wage through much of the continent is far lower than the living wage in the United States, so you end up having to pay people less to do the same amount of work if you are offloading the labor over there. And this is true of both left and right-wing accounts. The question becomes, why? For Native American culture, what is the end goal, other than just compiling a bunch of stuff together and curating it together for people to see? That's really what it is at the end of the day. The influence for a Native American culture account is to spread awareness about Native American culture so that it doesn't die. Okay. That's fair. And offloading that information, offloading that work to somebody in a different country, you can have conversations about the morality of it, but at the end of the day, you are just offloading curation to someone else. No different than offloading curation for the editing of a YouTube channel to somebody else. But when it's a MAGA account, there is a bit of a difference, because what is the purpose of a MAGA account? It is to spread MAGA ideology. And what MAGA ideology is can really depend on who you're talking to. For some people, the true MAGA is getting America back to the 50s. And for other people, the true MAGA is being incredibly racist, which is also the same thing as getting us back to the 50s. I don't know. Some people really like the 50s of America because they really liked watching Leave It to Beaver. And some people like the 50s of America because there was a different citizenship status for black people back then. You know, it really runs the gamut. So when we try to say that these are the same thing, oh, well, the accounts are ran in a different country, they are the same thing. Well, no, not really. The left-wing account, or at least the Native American account, ostensibly left-wing, who knows, that account is being ran in another country, likely is just a method of offloading labor that somebody does not want to do. The right-wing version of that, they're still offloading labor they did not want to do, if we're talking about the paid labor version of this. But what that labor is spreading, well, racism, division, and various other things that are not great for keeping a country together.
There's a couple different layers to this. A lot of them are just scam artists and opportunists because Elon activated monetization on Twitter. Others create big followings, posing as beautiful women to then have simps, as the kids say, DM them and then dupe them into subscribing to their OnlyFans or scam.
You know, it's kind of funny. I keep hearing people say that simps is a word that is like very, very new age and that people only started using recently, but I've been playing Knights of the Old Republic and that word is used derogatorily to anybody who is a simpleton who's fawning over like a fucking Twi'lek or who happens to be like ascribed to the wrong political ideology. Like that word was used by game designers in that RPG, people who were in their 30s and 40s when they made that game, likely, and the RPG came out in like 2006, 2007? I don't know. Let me know in the comment section when KOTOR came out, but that's one of those things that has nothing to do with the video at all, but it's weird to me finding people who think that this is a term that is like newer and as the kids say, and then finding out that video games from 20 years ago were also using the term. So anybody who grew up in that time and is now 30 or 40 would likely have heard the term used that way. Anyway, Mark does have a point here. Any account that knows how the algorithm works knows that inflammatory rhetoric can get you a lot of money if you are monetized based on the amount of views that you get. Inflammatory rhetoric also happens to go very hand in hand with the MAGA movement. So you get an account that's inflammatory and is constantly baiting people into rage posts, and then suddenly people are going to respond to that account, and then suddenly you are making a lot more money. I mean, wasn't it Cat Turd who went on the internet and said that he spends like 16 hours a day on Twitter and he's just wondering if it's even worth it? And I have to wonder, what kind of a brain-rotted individual do you have to be to do Twitter as a job? Like, that has to be one of the most soul-sucking experiences of all time.
Speaking of people who weren't born in this country and aren't living in this country are the countless, mostly Indian-based trolls that have infested Twitter. And like I said, Elon revealed the location of different accounts. So liberal media is trying to spin it because there are people of all political persuasion, just scam artists of all different kinds, going after all the different niches. as well as some information warfare operations conducted by Ben Shapiro's favorite country in order to stir up problems and to promote certain, Ben's agenda. But so the liberal media is spinning it as if only MAGA influencers were accidentally unmasked.
I always wonder, is it that me and a right-wing influencer are ideologically aligned against Israel, or are they just an anti-Semite and I don't like genocide? Like, is it one of those things? Because I feel like it's one of those things. Anyway, I do like how Mark is spinning this a little bit, because if a website says breaking, millions of MAGA accounts are actively being exposed as Indians. Okay, fair enough. I feel like focusing on them being specifically Indian might have some weird undertones there, but it is fair to say that that is trying to influence people to think that this is mostly a MAGA thing. So the question becomes, what do those actual numbers look like? Because note that Mark grabbed a single instance of a left-wing organization, and the left-wing organization was the Native Americans, and he also stated that he's okay with, cultural genocide, and I'm not saying that to be hyperbolic. He did begin this video saying that anybody who has Native American heritage should probably abandon their heritage and assimilate further into American society instead. And I'm just going to throw it out there. We have a word for what that cadence is. And this is one of the reasons why I don't think that the opposition to Israel that Mark Dice and I have is from the same point of view, because I feel like genocide of any kind, bad. And I don't know if that's how he feels, because he advocated for it in the beginning of his own video. So a thing to note as I've been trying to dig through this, Fox News actually tries to point out that X's new location feature exposes apparent fraudster accounts posing as Americans and Gaza journalists. So the right-wing spin on this is an attempt to try to talk about the left-wing influencers as well. But even in that article, they still end up having to talk about 1776 General and a bunch of other MAGA accounts. So while a lot of our data is showing that between thousands and millions of MAGA accounts are being shown as, being the ones that are popped out there as being un-American, we see isolated examples from both Mark Dice and Fox News of individual accounts that may or may not be based where they are supposed to, with Motazim Al-Dalol being one of the ones that's talked about here. Says he's a Gaza-based journalist, but account is based in Poland as far as Twitter is concerned. And I want to note, this is a common right-wing tactic that gets used a lot. A common scapegoat for right-wingers is when you point out a systemic problem, they will say, well, here's an isolated incident that shows that the exact same thing is happening on the other side. And no, by the numbers, it appears to be that anytime a right-wing influencer has to talk about this, whether they are on a big podcast, or they're on Fox News, or they're just a guy like Mark Dice, no matter what, their instance of a left-wing version of this is a account, a person, or at best a handful of people. Whereas when we see the exact same information coming out about MAGA, it's numbers in the thousands or millions. So, one, these two things are not the same based on the type of content they are trying to showcase, like I said with the Native American example, and also by the numbers, we are seeing more of this from the side of MAGA. Now, we don't have hard numbers. We have estimates everywhere. And I couldn't find enough people talking about the liberal accounts that were exposed to even get anything major here. I even resorted to going to fucking ChatGPT and asking it to find numbers for me. And of course, the numbers it gave me were wrong there too. It said there were only 10 MAGA accounts and an estimate of 2 to 8 left-leaning accounts, which, there is a hard line difference between 10 and an estimate of 2 to 8 versus the millions that are apparently being reported. Just another example of AI being fucking useless at anything that it ever purports to be able to do. So again, it's interesting to me that the angle of attack for Fox and Mark Dice and all of them is to talk about these things as if they are equal when they are not, in both quantity and quality.
So over the weekend, a lot of people were screenshotting these accounts and exposing them. Some of them just deleted their account because they didn't want to get further revealed. And you have somebody, it's like this clown who says, breaking, millions of MAGA accounts are actively being exposed as Indians. Millions of them. But like we all know, Indian culture is synonymous with scam artists and poop throwers, but really scam artists. Just like Italians are known for pizza, India is known for scam artists of all different kinds, posing as Indians or Native Americans, rather. Posing as beautiful women so that the simps will DM them and go over to their OnlyFans.
Man, the intellectual prowess of painting an entire culture as a culture of scam artists. I wonder what it's like to be such an intellectual giant as Mark Dice. So the reason that Indians got that particular racist stereotype at all is because of America, actually. It's actually America's fault. And I know that sounds weird, but when America started outsourcing a lot of its jobs to India for call centers, this created the stereotype of the Indian tech support agent. Now, over time, if any of these tech support centers were to lose their contracts, either because of some mishap or because the tech support center just had its contract run out or some U.S. legislation caused some of those centers to actually move back to the United States, you ended up having hundreds of people who still needed to be able to work and had the skill set of being a tech support agent. So how do you make money without a legitimate business contract there? Well, you scam people. You get people who are willing to put money over the actual lives of individual people, and you start scamming people. This is the reason that many of the earliest examples of the Indian scammer stereotype are, well, offshoots of major tech company tech support scams like Microsoft and Amazon. These people would get you to pay for fake services, but they were using the skill set that they had gained from working as tech support. Like literally the tech support industry offshoring itself away from America to find a cheaper alternative to paying American workers directly led as a domino effect to the idea of the Indian scam caller. This has actually led to some widespread myths about Hinduism actually saying that stealing is okay, but I wasn't able to find any evidence to back that up. But there is an aspect of Indian culture that I was able to find that actually does kind of lean into the stereotype of scams, and that's not actually directly related to the United States offshoring an industry, and that's the haggling culture in India. Turns out there's actually a haggling culture there that is so profound, ends up being less about the transaction of the money that's being like spent between you and the other person, and it ends up being more of an interaction or a game, a cultural ritual about trying to get the best deal you can get that everybody else is expected to participate in. From what I've been reading, apparently in a lot of open Indian markets, bargaining isn't just what you do to save money, it's the actual icebreaker for conversation. And for a lot of people in America, this can be seen as something that's not really okay to do. For here, we have a lot of different information about the hardworking American and the set price that they have and not trying to haggle with retailers like Walmart and Amazon and Target. So it's not really a part of our culture to haggle anywhere near as hard, but in Indian culture it is. And that can seem kind of, well, scammy to an American. And then take that and rub it in with the tech industry scamming that we've seen historically as a result of American influence, and suddenly you get the stereotype of the Indian scammer. What began in one country as a way to build rapport with somebody who was running a stall gets turned into a sleazy business practice in the eyes of an American. And what began as a way for Americans to offshore a lot of their tech support turns into a scam industry when contracts run out. It's a very strange societal domino effect, but it's led to this racial stereotype that we have today. So it's really frustrating watching somebody like Mark just dismiss the entire history of a culture, like he did with Native Americans, just basically saying that they should culturally genocide themselves. It's really frustrating seeing somebody go through and just dismiss entire cultures with a giant racist stereotype when there's a lot of layers to actually look at with that culture that were very interesting for me to read. And, you know, I'll also have a link in the description to some of the stuff that I was reading in the middle of this.
Anybody with half a brain should have known that these were scam accounts from the very start.
Huh, that's weird. Then, did you know? Like, were you able to point out exactly which ones were actually real MAGA influencers the entire time? Or is this one of those, I always knew because I have hindsight and hindsight's 2020 situations?
And many people did, which is why they were calling for the locations to be revealed. But it still is a little tedious because you have to go to somebody's profile page and then click on the date that they joined in order for it to then reveal where they're from. So that really should be prominently on their bio. And Twitter, all social media platforms, need to implement a feature so that you can block entire regions, because I know that I'm not the only one who doesn't want to hear from any account from India and dozens of other countries.
Yeah, I'm somehow not surprised that Mark Dice definitely does not want to hear anything from anybody of any other culture. That doesn't surprise me, not even in the slightest.
So it'll be interesting to see the reaction to this from the Democrats, because we all know that they freaked out about supposed Russian interference for years, but they don't seem to have a problem with India interference.
Weren't you the one who mentioned that the left wing is reporting on this a bunch? Like, isn't the Democratic response already reporting on this? Like, that feels like the thing that's already happening. Also, the Russian influence part, that's an interesting one. I want to dig into that as the last thing in the video. Some of the key findings from the Mueller report were that the Russian interference in the 2016 election was actually sweeping and systemic, with a lot of their vectors for attack being social media, information warfare, and campaigns that favored candidate Trump, and the hijacking of the Clinton campaign-related databases and releasing of stolen materials through Russian-created entities and WikiLeaks. Russia also stole information from a bunch of registered voters in the United States during the 2016 presidential campaign, and this has been information they've been able to use ever since. And there is all kinds of information in the Mueller report about what happened with Trump and Russia. So it's really weird when I hear things from Mark Dice about, oh, well, they went on about Russia, but like, we actually have the evidence that Russia was trying to interfere in the United States elections. And the reason that people tend to dismiss the report is that the report found that there was no collusion. Specifically, there was no active information that showed that the United States as an entity and Russia as an entity were shaking hands during the 2016 campaign. But what the report did find is that despite there not being any explicit handshaking, there was a ton of Russia influence. However, MAGA influencers love to say that, well, there was no collusion as a way to dismiss that there was, in fact, interference, and plenty of it to boot. But this is a pretty common conservative tactic. You show actual evidence that they are wrong, and then they find something short, quippy, and wrong that, well, lets them dismiss it entirely. It's not only a common tactic, but it's also a very frustrating tactic, because there really is no reason for people to believe the tactic, but it works because people don't like doing any actual research. But I am going to provide a link to the findings from the Mueller report in case any of you want to read through it. I think that you'll find it to be a very interesting read in case anybody decides to bring up this particular tired old point. And speaking of tired, I am sick and tired. So that's it for Mark's video, and that's it for any conversation about the actual X-Files. What I will say before I leave is that if you want my usual responses to the news that are not video responses, maybe you should check out my secondary channel. If you head over to Suris Live, you'll find any of my reactions to the news, my collaborations with Vice Rhino. All that stuff is gonna be over there, and I am uploading daily on that channel. So there should be daily content on this channel, on that channel, and of course on my Magic the Gathering channel. I want to thank you very much for watching, and I want to thank those of you who are patrons of mine. If you support the channel, thank you so much for that. I appreciate it greatly, especially with me being sick right now. You guys are fucking awesome. Thank you. That all said, thank you for watching, and I will see y'all in the next one. Insert end of video tagline here. Hey, you made it to the end. I want to give an extra thanks to the patrons who allow me to do this full time. I want to thank Aaron Rail, Astral, Britzkrieg, Jemshin, Poundini, Red Joker, Victoria, Jonas, Craig, Tarika, Fireshard, Smiling GM, John, Dren Hadamada, Creeper, Sagitta, you know I'm not saying that last part, Valis of Seraph, Ottoman Angel, Rooster Rachel, and Fire Panda, who are all my $20 and up patrons.